All right, everybody. I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA. This is my stimulus update for Tuesday, May 19th. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. We're going to talk about the IRS reopening their phone lines. We're going to talk about the debit cards that are making the headlines. I'm going to do a big old Q&A at the end of this video. Lots of questions I'm going to be answering. But first, though, let us talk about some good news. All right. So some people who received their stimulus payments. So Juanita, let me move myself over here. Juanita says that she gets SSI, and on May 13th, 2020, she finally got her stimulus. This is consistent with the timeline that was on the Social Security Administration website. Remember, SSA put out that guide, that thing with all that charts and that table. And what they said was on May 13th, those on SSI would receive their stimulus payment by direct deposit or direct express, depending on if they receive their benefits in those two ways. That's what they said. Okay, and for Juanita, that was true. So that's awesome to hear, Juanita. Now, Christine said, I finally got my SSI stimulus payment yesterday in the mail. So this is also consistent with the timeline on the SSA website that I shared with you all. SSA said that May 13th would be for SSI recipients on direct deposit and direct express, but they said on May 15th is when they would start cutting paper checks for those on SSI. So Christine, having received her stimulus payment, you said 1 day ago, so I think that's Monday or maybe over the weekend. I'm not sure, but that's consistent with basically that timeline on the SSA website that I shared with you all. Let's move on to Helen. Helen Richardson says, I received my stimulus May 13th, 2020 through direct deposit. I received VA death benefits. Okay, so this is interesting. Remember I told you that, okay, Treasury is going to be doing a big deposit on May 13th, right? Yeah, we know they're going to be doing SSI that day, right, which is a lot of people. They might be roping several other groups in on that deposit last Wednesday, May 13th. And it looks like Helen was in that group as well. So that's great to hear, Helen. Gilbert says he finally received our pending notification to get our payment via direct deposit on this Wednesday, May 20th. I was qualified and eligible under my SSDI, VA benefits, and filing my 2018 and 2019 taxes. That's great to hear, Gil. Then he goes on to talk about correctly that the IRS is real quick in getting your money, but if you owe the IRS, they'll take their sweet time. And that's true, because Gil, let me look at Gil's situation. There was not one, not two, but three places that the IRS could have gotten his information. One is SSDI, Social Security Administration. Two is the VA. Three is his tax returns. If anybody should have been first in line to get a stimulus, it's Gil. It's covered all his bases, right? The three sources of information other than get my payment or non-filer's tool. The three main sources of information: SSA, VA, tax return itself. I would have thought that Gil would have gotten his last month, but I'm glad to hear he has it. Is supposedly going to get it tomorrow, and I hope that happens, Gil. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate that it took the government so long. All right, so now let's talk about these phone lines. So what the IRS has said yesterday is that they're adding 3,500 phone operators to answer stimulus questions, basically, when you call the number at the bottom of the Trump letter, which is 1-800-919-9835. Here's what the IRS said. They said answers for most economic impact payment questions are available on the automated message for people who call the phone number provided in the letter. Notice 1444. That's the Trump letter. Those who need additional assistance at the conclusion of the message will have the option of talking to a telephone representative. So I called trying this number yesterday, right? 1-800-919-9835. But all I got was an automated message. I tried all kinds of button combinations on there to try to get to this mystical conclusion of the message they're talking about. I could never reach a live person. So I'm not convinced that this is completely operational yet. But just know that the IRS appears to slowly but surely bringing employees back to work, right? They're bringing these telephone operators. Might they start processing paper returns soon? I don't know. All right, now let's talk about these debit cards, these EIP cards. So yesterday, the Treasury announced that they'll be sending out 4 million stimulus payments by prepaid debit card rather than paper check. This is funny because right when I released my video yesterday about Mark Cuban's stimulus idea, which has to do with prepaid debit cards, I saw this notification from Treasury. So I was like, whoa, coincidence. Anyway, they're calling these stimulus cards EIP cards, right? EIP obviously stands for economic impact payments, which is what the IRS calls the stimulus. And they say these cards will be issued to those without bank information on file and whose tax return was processed by either the Andover or Austin IRS Service Center. I don't know off the top of my head what Andover processes, but I know that Austin, Texas processes returns for residents of Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, I think the U.S. territories as well. But anyway, this is just to say that this is a relatively small segment of the population. And that themselves, they said it's going to be 4 million, right, is the number they put out. They said that MetaBank, Treasury's financial agent, will start mailing these cards this week. So potentially some people might receive these stimulus EIP cards this week. So 2 observations here. Treasury is obviously changing the rules on a daily basis. I mean, what did the Get My Payment tool tell these people was going to be their payment method for the past few weeks? Were these all people who saw payment status not available? Were these people who saw that, oh, I'm going to get a paper check, but now they changed the game this week and say, you're going to get a prepaid debit card? I don't know, but I'd be very curious if any of you out there in your Get My Payment tool, if you see EIP card or debit card or something like that in the Get My Payment tool, because I'm very curious about how this situation relates to Get My Payment. Other people have asked me in the comments if I think that Treasury putting out these prepaid debit cards is indicative of perhaps another round of stimulus. Of course, that's possible. We saw a report. It was not much to the report. It was like anonymous sources and all that saying that the White House would be open to another round of checks. Republicans haven't completely put away that idea, right? So this could be used for that in the future. But as I've been telling you for a while, what I am frankly almost positive that these things will not be used for is for any kind of UBI, right? At least not while Republicans control the Senate, right? The $2,000 a month, or as Sanders was calling for and Harris was calling for, $4,000 a month, $6,000 a month, $8,000 a month, $10,000 a month. That's just not going to happen. All right. Remember, Trump and Republicans want America to get back to work. If you watch Mnuchin in his virtually testifying, right, when senators asking him questions this morning, along with Jerome Powell, what was he talking about? He was talking about reopening the country. He said, there's the risk of permanent damage to the economy the longer we continue the shutdown. The administration is conscious of the health issues, but they still want to reopen the country in a safe and balanced way. And if you're getting $6,000 a month or something like that, right, and you made $3,000 a month at your job, what incentive do you really have to get back to work, right? If you're going to be getting a government check for $6,000 a month, basically UBI. So, possible there's another round of stimulus, right? We know the Democrats are calling for that, but this whole UBI idea, I think that is a pipe dream. But just taking Mnuchin's statements about the debit cards at face value yesterday, what did he say they were for? I'm going to read you what he said. He said the direct deposit, speaking of the stimulus, he said the direct deposits have gone out. We've started sending out the checks. We're also going to be supplementing our capability and sending out prepaid debit cards so we can get money out quickly to people. So Mnuchin is positioning this whole debit card thing as just a speed and efficiency thing. So that's as far as I'm going to go on that. But I would be extremely curious if any of you are seeing debit card or something, or EIP card or something like that in the Get My Payment tool. All right, now let's move on to Q&A. I'm going to answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or so questions today. So let's get into it. All right, let me move myself back over here. Ariel Moore says, my son is 9. I'm his representative payee. Is he going to receive the full stimulus or the $500? Because I received the $1,200 already. So, this is an interesting question. So I would assume that if he's your dependent, right, if you cover the majority of his support, okay, which I assume you do, then he lives with you, right? So that would mean that he wouldn't qualify for the $1,200, but you would qualify for the $500 for him. But we do know that there are cases, right, of many cases actually, of people around the country not receiving the $500 for their dependent children. Senators have told the IRS and Treasury, to fix this problem. Watch my video. I think it was either last week or the week before, the one with the baby on it. I talk about these issues. I go over the senator's letter to the IRS and Treasury saying, hey, there's so many people out there who they got their $1,200 stimulus, but they haven't received the $500 for their children. What's going on? You guys got to fix this. So Ariel, I would encourage you to watch that video. Just know that there are senators who are fighting for you for this situation because a lot of people who were entitled to the $500 for their dependent children have not received it. All right, let's move on to Mark Brown. Hello, Logan. Do people in SSI qualify for the new stimulus bill if the bill passes the Senate? So yeah, Mark, the answer to that question is yes. The HEROES Act does not constrict who's eligible for the stimulus. If it's passed, it would actually expand the definition of who is eligible for a stimulus payment. So if you were eligible for a stimulus payment under the CARES Act, you will be eligible for a stimulus payment under the HEROES Act if, of course, it passes. Now, there's not a huge chance of it passing, okay? There's actually a very small chance of it passing as is. But I still think the HEROES Act is important because if there is a bipartisan bill, right, that gets pushed through the Senate and signed by the president, if there is another relief bill that actually goes through, it will have elements of what Republicans want and it will have elements of what Democrats want, okay? And it's quite possible that if there is another relief bill, it will incorporate elements of the HEROES Act. Okay, so that's why I still think the HEROES Act is important, and that's why I refer to it, and that's why I'm continuing to study it. All right, but to answer your question, Mark, people on SSI would not be disqualified from a stimulus under the HEROES Act. They'd still have to qualify, under the other requirements that the HEROES Act has. Namely, if you're a dependent, you wouldn't get the $1,200 they're calling for, but someone who claims you would, for example. But yeah, the HEROES Act does not make the population of people eligible for stimulus more narrow than CARES Act. It seeks to expand it. Deborah Wood, what about the divorced couples who had to file together by decree and they filed before the coronavirus stuff? What if the one awarded the refund does not give you your $1,200? Will there be a way you can report to the IRS on your 2019 or 2020 tax return? So, Deborah, you said you filed together, and I assume you're referring to your 2018 tax return because you asked about your 2019 and 2020 returns. So I assume you haven't filed those yet. So if all the IRS is going off of is your 2018 return, and you filed jointly because you said you filed together, I'm going to take your word on that. Then the stimulus will be issued jointly to both of your names. And if it's attempted to be deposited into an account that's only one of your names, it will be rejected. So, keep that in mind. But that said, where can you report it to the IRS? Yeah. So what the IRS has said is that on your 2020 return, that's where you can be made whole. Okay. We obviously don't know what the 2020 return looks like at this point, but you will be made whole eventually. I'm not sure if that would come in the form of a stimulus check, right now. Because let's say that your ex got a paper check. Then let's say the direct deposit was rejected and they sent him a paper check, and let's say he just holds on to it, right? Because he's just mean or something like that. Look, you're going to be made whole. You might not get the stimulus check this year because you have kind of a unique situation, but you will be made whole at the latest on your 2020 tax return. Red Bless, Mr. Logan, for people paying their child support faithfully, will they be able to receive the whole check because of this crisis? So Red, you said you're paying your child support faithfully. Okay, so that means you're not in arrears. So yeah, you're just like everybody else. You have to be eligible like everybody else for the stimulus, but your stimulus isn't going to be affected just by your child support because you are on top of it. Sarah Rickert says, hi, I've been following your videos and I want to thank you for being so helpful to everyone this confusing time. I have a couple questions. If you have the time to help, please. All right, first question. I had a baby in 2019 and got my stimulus check before filing my 2019 taxes. So it went based off my 2018 tax returns and I never received anything for my daughter. I recently filed my 2019 tax return. Will I receive the payment or did I miss the mark for the first stimulus? So, Sarah, so the IRS has not indicated that they are going to true up stimulus payments or send out, the $500 for dependent children for those who didn't get the stimulus check for it. Okay, they haven't said that. But like I mentioned to a previous person, There are senators right now. There's one group of senators who's fighting to get that $500 for people, right, ASAP. So because right now the only thing you could do, Sarah, according to IRS guidance, is get the $500 through your 2020 tax return. You'll still get it. You're just gonna have to wait a year. A group of senators wrote a letter to IRS and Treasury saying, "Hey, you got to get these people their $500 now." So people are aware of this issue. And there's another group of senators who proposed something called the Newborn Cares Act, which is for people who had a child in 2020, right? Because for them it's the same thing. They can get the $500 when they file their 2020 tax return, but they're saying no, they need money now. Even people who had children born in 2020. Will the IRS act on this? I don't know, but just know, Sarah, that there are senators in Congress, right now fighting for people in your situation, right, and people in similar situations. So you can see my coverage of that. I went through the senator's letter and all that in my video. I think it's titled like Newborn Cares Act, and it's got a picture of a baby on it. If you look through my video archive, go ahead and watch that. Your next question. My boyfriend has a traumatic brain injury and hasn't had any income in years, so he filed through the IRS portal. He owes back paid child support for his other children, and the state of New Jersey took his check. After that, he got accepted for SSI. With the new stimulus, will child support be able to take his next payment, or is he now protected since he's deemed disabled? All right, so Sarah, since next stimulus is you're referring to the HEROES Act, has not been passed yet, okay? It will very likely not pass in its entirety, okay? Let's just be clear on that. So I'm just going to talk about what the HEROES Act proposes. The HEROES Act proposes that even those who are behind on child support would still be eligible for a stimulus payment. Their child support, their past due child support would not affect their stimulus. That's what the HEROES Act is proposing to do for a next round of stimulus that it's calling for, as well as to make that retroactive for the previous round of stimulus. Okay, it wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that he's deemed disabled. It's just because that's what the HEROES Act is calling for. Okay. You can watch my video. I think I called it 5 ways the HEROES Act would change stimulus or something like that. I posted it. I think I posted it last week, right? When the day that the HEROES Act bill was released. So you can look at my archives for that, where I go over the whole child support thing. Judy Washburn, my husband just got out of prison after 31 years. He has not worked, but he does get food stamps. He is going to get a stimulus check, or what is he going to get a stimulus check, or what do we need to do? I receive SSDI and I receive my check. Okay, so Judy, based on your husband's 2018 and 2019 information when he was incarcerated, he would not be eligible for a stimulus check based on that information, right? 2018 and 2019. Because IRS goes off 2018 and 2019, right, when looking at eligibility for stimulus. However, 2020, he is no longer incarcerated. You said he just got out of prison. I assume that means he got out in 2020. So he would be eligible for the $1,200 on his 2020 tax return. So I don't know if y'all file tax returns. If you don't, I am hoping that the IRS has some kind of a portal next year where non-filers can use it to get the stimulus payment they missed out on in 2020. If not, maybe you'll just have to file a simple tax return, put $1 of income or something like that. So while he might not get a stimulus check this year, he would still be eligible for the $1,200 on his 2020 tax return. Patricia Gaskins, Logan, can you tell me whether fathers in arrears of child support will receive a stimulus check? Well, it will be reduced by any past due child support. So, if he owes less than $1,200, right, he would get a stimulus payment if he's otherwise eligible for the difference between $1,200 and whatever he was in arrears for. But if he's in arrears for more than $1,200 or whatever his otherwise eligible stimulus payment would be, he wouldn't get one. Like I mentioned to a previous questioner, the HEROES Act is trying to change that. Helen Thomas, can my federal and state refund be taken for unemployment offset during this pandemic? Helen, the answer is yes, currently. Because she's referring to her refund, by the way, not her stimulus. All right, if she was asking about stimulus, the answer would be no. Robert Wilcox Sr., I still have not received my stimulus check yet. I'm on Social Security disability. Tool tells me payment information not available still. Yeah, Robert, I wouldn't be too concerned about this. It's unfortunate because the IRS said, the Treasury has said, Social Security Administration has said that SSDI should have received their stimulus at the end of April, right? But that clearly hasn't happened, at least via direct deposit. If you're waiting for a paper check, Who knows? I mean, you could be waiting a while, but I wouldn't be too concerned about the Get My Payment tool telling you payment status not available, because they have said, SSA has said that the Get My Payment tool will show payment status not available for those on SSDI, SSI, Social Security, all those government programs until the payment actually starts being processed. Okay, which might be very soon before you actually see your payment. So I wouldn't be too concerned. Complete You says, I sent in a paper return, haven't received my taxes or stimulus money. When should I expect my money? Well, there's a few situations here, and I would want to actually get a better feel for your situation, Complete You. But obviously, there's the issue of whether or not the IRS has processed your paper I assume you're referring to 2019, your paper 2019 tax return yet. But beyond that issue, let's talk about 2018. Did you file a 2018 tax return? Because even if the IRS hasn't filed your 2019 tax return and they look at your 2018 tax return, okay, they can go off of that, right? And if you received a direct deposit refund in 2018, you should have probably received your stimulus by now. But if you didn't receive a direct deposit refund in 2018, meaning that you either owed the IRS or you received a paper check refund or you broke even, right? Then you'd be looking at a paper check if the IRS hasn't yet processed your 2019 return. Okay, so that's a situation if the IRS hasn't processed your 2019 return and you did file a 2018 return. Now, what if you didn't file a 2018 return and the IRS hasn't yet processed your 2019 return? You're going to be waiting. The IRS has started to call back employees slowly but surely. I mentioned the 3,500 call center operators, answering stimulus questions. They might bring back people to process paper checks sometime shortly. But I really don't have an answer for you there. I don't know when the IRS is going to be processing paper again. And even if I did, I wouldn't know if your return's at the top of their stack or the bottom of their stack. Okay, so I can't tell you exactly when to expect your money. I just wouldn't expect it anytime soon, assuming the IRS hasn't yet processed your paper return yet. Now, if they have processed your paper tax return, let's say, and the closer to the beginning of the year, okay, that you filed your paper tax return, the better a likelihood is that they've already processed it. I would check the Where's My Refund tool, by the way, if you haven't already. But the closest that it is to, the middle of April, or if it's after the end of April, the less likely they've already processed it. But they have processed it, right? I would ask, well, how did you receive your refund? If it's direct deposit, you should have already received it. But if it was via paper check, then you'd be looking at a paper check as well, which could last a while. So there's just so many variables here, Complete You, about your situation that I don't know, and also about what the IRS is planning to do in terms of getting people processing paper returns in that I don't know. So I'm sorry, but I can't really give you a date or a very good answer on that. So that is all for today. I'm going to hop back. I'm going to keep watching Jerome Powell's and Secretary Mnuchin's virtual testimony before senators. It's kind of funny when you watch this thing, it's like the Democrats, like Sherrod Brown was on there, and he was like, how many people are going to die because you want to reopen that country? And then the Republicans are like, you're doing great, champ. You're doing great, Mnuchin. Keep it up. You're under immense pressure. Keep it up. So, it's a little partisan, like always, on Capitol Hill. But I'll get back to watching that and see if there's any tidbits in there that could be giving some clues about our next stimulus or anything like that. Be sure to check the links in the description for free stuff, free stocks, cashback for receipts, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.